Before we dive into the story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. Wishing you a beautiful day now. Sit back and enjoy the story. The scream of twisted metal against asphalt cut through the Miami night like a prayer answered by the devil himself. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the warehouse window, watching the Ferrari 812 superfast slide sideways through the intersection below. The driver overcorrected, sending the $250,000 machine spinning into a light pole with a sound that made her teeth ache. She was already moving before the echo faded, grabbing her emergency kit from the workbench where she'd been rebuilding a Porsche engine. The warehouse that housed Midnight Motors sat in Miami's industrial district, far from the glittering towers where people with Ferrari money lived their pristine lives. But crashes happened everywhere, and Elena had learned long ago that metal and flesh followed the same laws of physics, regardless of net worth. The rain hit her face like cold needles as she sprinted across the street. Steam rose from the Ferrari's crumpled hood, and the acrid smell of burning electronics mixed with the ozone scent of the storm. The driver's side door hung open at an unnatural angle. Behind the spider-webbed windshield, she could see a man, slumped forward, dark hair matted with blood. "Don't move!" she called out, dropping to her knees beside the wreckage. Glass crunched under her jeans as she reached through the twisted door frame to check his pulse, strong and steady, but his breathing was shallow. A cut across his forehead leaked blood onto his expensive shirt. His left arm hung wrong. The man's eyes fluttered open. Even dazed and bleeding, they were the most unsettling shade of green she'd ever seen, like sea glass held up to sunlight. When he focused on her face, something shifted behind those eyes. Not gratitude, recognition. "You," he whispered, his voice rough with pain and something else she couldn't identify. Elena frowned. She'd never seen this man before in her life, but the way he looked at her sent ice down her spine. "You're hurt. Try not to talk." "Elena Vasquez." He said her name like it tasted bitter. "I've been looking for you." Her hand stilled on his wrist. Nobody called her Elena anymore. That name had died in a courthouse 3 years ago, along with everything else she'd tried to build. These days, she was just Lena, the mechanic who could make any engine sing, and who asked no questions about where the cars came from or where they were going. "I think you have me confused with someone else." She kept her voice steady, professional. "We need to get you to a hospital." The man tried to sit up, wincing as the movement sent fresh blood down his face. "My name is Alexander Reeves. Does that mean anything to you?" It meant everything. The name hit her like a physical blow, dragging up memories she'd spent 3 years trying to bury. Alexander Reeves, the prosecutor who'd destroyed her life. The man whose closing argument had sent her brother to prison for a crime he didn't commit. The man whose cold efficiency had torn apart the only family she had left. But this couldn't be him. That Alexander Reeves had been clean-cut and ruthless, with silver hair and eyes like winter ice. This man was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of rugged handsomeness that belonged on magazine covers rather than in courtrooms. "I don't know any Alexander Reeves," she lied. But her voice cracked on the words. He studied her face through the rain and blood, and she saw the moment he caught her tell. A smile ghosted across his lips, humorless and sharp. "My father was Alexander Reeves. I'm Alex, and I know exactly what you did to my family." The words hit her like ice water. The prosecutor who'd railroaded her brother had a son who'd apparently been looking for her. A son who'd just crashed a $250,000 car outside her shop in what couldn't possibly be a coincidence. "What do you want?" The question came out as a whisper. Alex tried to push himself upright again, his jaw clenched against what had to be significant pain. "I want you to pay for what you took from me. But first I need you to save my life." Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, Lena's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. If this was Alexander Reeves' son, if he'd been looking for her, then her carefully constructed new life was already over. The police would come, there would be questions, and questions led to background checks. Background checks led to discovery. Discovery led to running again. "The paramedics will be here soon," she said, starting to stand. His hand shot out faster than she would have thought possible for someone who'd just wrapped a Ferrari around a light pole. His fingers locked around her wrist with surprising strength. "If you'll leave me here, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who Elena Vasquez really is," he said, his green eyes boring into hers. "But if you help me, if you get me somewhere safe before the cops arrive, I'll give you something you want more than your next breath. There's nothing you could possibly have that I want." "Proof," he said, and the single word stopped her heart. "Proof that your brother didn't kill my father." The world tilted around her. The rain felt suddenly too cold, the sirens too close. Miguel had been convicted of murdering Alexander Reeves 3 years ago, but Elena had never believed it. Brother had been many things, but he wasn't a killer. She'd spent every dollar she had on lawyers and private investigators, searching for evidence that never materialized. "The case was airtight," the prosecution said. "Justice served." "You're lying. The real killer is still out there," Alex said, his grip tightening on her wrist. "And I can prove it. But only if you keep me alive long enough to show you." The sirens were only blocks away now. In seconds, this intersection would be crawling with cops and paramedics. Elena looked down at Alex's bloodied face, at the green eyes that held secrets she'd killed, herself trying to uncover. She'd spent 3 years running from the truth about that night. 3 years believing her brother was rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. If there was even a chance this man could prove Miguel's innocence. "Can you walk?" Alex's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I knew you'd see reason." Elena helped him to his feet just as the first police cruiser rounded the corner, its blue and red lights painting the wet street in primary colors. They had maybe 30 seconds before the intersection became a crime scene. "There's a service tunnel that connects to the old metro construction," she said, supporting his weight as they stumbled toward the shadows between 2 warehouses. "It comes up 6 blocks from here. You know the city's underground pretty well for a mechanic. You learn to know all the exits when you're running from something." They disappeared into the maze of industrial alleys just as the paramedics' truck screamed past. Behind them, the Ferrari continued to steam and bleed fluids onto the asphalt. A monument to the moment Elena's carefully ordered world had crashed back into the chaos she had tried so hard to escape. As they limped through the rain toward the tunnel entrance, Alex's weight heavy against her shoulder, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But the alternative was letting the only lead on her brother's case bleed out in the street. "This proof you claim to have," she said as they reached the rusted gate that led to the tunnels. "What makes you so sure Miguel didn't kill your father?" Alex turned to look at her, and in the dim light from a distant street lamp, his green eyes looked almost predatory, 'cause he said, "I was there the night my father died. And I know who really pulled the trigger." The service tunnels smelled like decades of rust and forgotten rain. Elena's phone flashlight cut through the darkness ahead of them, illuminating graffiti-covered walls and the occasional scurry of rats disturbed by their footsteps. Alex's breathing had grown more labored in the 10 minutes since they had entered the underground maze. She could feel his weight increasing against her shoulder. "There's an abandoned metro station about half a mile ahead," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We can rest there, get a better look at your injuries." "Worried about me?" His voice held a note of dark amusement, despite the pain she could hear threading through it. "Worried about you dying before you tell me what really happened to your father?" The truth was more complicated than that, though she'd die before admitting. It's something about Alex Reeves pulled at her in ways that made no sense. Maybe it was the vulnerability she'd glimpsed when he was pinned in that wreckage, or the way his green eyes seemed to see straight through every defense she'd built. Or maybe it was the simple fact that he represented the first real hope she'd had in 3 years of believing her brother was innocent. They emerged into the abandoned Omni station, a relic from Miami's failed metro expansion in the 90s. Broken tiles crunched under their feet as Elena guided Alex to a concrete bench beneath a flickering emergency light that somehow still functioned. The space felt like a cathedral built for ghosts, all arched ceilings and empty platforms that had never seen their first passenger. "Let me see that arm," she said, setting her emergency kit on the bench. Alex shrugged out of his jacket with obvious difficulty. His shirt was torn and blood-stained, revealing a lean frame marked with old, Scars she hadn't expected. These weren't the soft marks of a privileged prosecutor's son, but the hard lines of someone who'd fought for something once upon a time. Dislocated shoulder, she diagnosed, running careful fingers along the joint. I can reset it, but it's going to hurt. Pain and I are old friends. Looked directly at her. Your brother never mentioned you were a medic along with being a mechanic. Elena's hands stilled. What do you mean, my brother never mentioned it? I visited Miguel in prison 6 months ago. We had a very interesting conversation about family loyalty and the things people do for the ones they love. Ice formed in her chest. You spoke to Miguel. Every month for the past year, actually. He's protective of you, even now. Wouldn't tell me where you'd gone after you changed your name and disappeared. But he did tell me about the little sister who could fix anything. Broken Hood patched him up after fights when they were kids. Alex winced as she tested the range of motion in his shoulder. He also told me he didn't kill my father. Of course he told you that. He's innocent. I know. A simple statement hit her like a physical blow. I've known since the night it happened. Lena's hands dropped away from his shoulder. Then why didn't you say anything during the trial? Why did you let him go to prison? Alex's laugh was bitter enough to etch glass, because I was 17 years old and scared out of my mind, because the real killer threatened to frame me next. If I opened my mouth, because I was a coward who chose to save himself instead of an innocent man. The confession hung between them in the stale air of the abandoned station. Elena stared at him, trying to process what he'd just admitted. This man, this stranger who'd crashed into her life an hour ago, had let her brother rot in prison for 3 years because he'd been afraid. You bastard. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried the weight of 3 years' worth of grief and rage. Miguel's life has been destroyed. His daughter barely remembers what her father looks like. And you've known the truth the whole time. Yes. Alex met her eyes without flinching. And I've spent every day of the last 3 years trying to find a way to make it right without getting myself killed in the process. Who? The question came out harsh. Who really killed your father? Alex was quiet for a long moment, staring at the shadows dancing on the tunnel walls. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of secrets too heavy for one person to bear. Victor Reyes. He runs most of the drug trade between Miami and Colombia, but he's careful enough that the law has never been able to touch him. My father had been building a case against him for 2 years. It was close to an indictment when he died. Elena's blood chilled. She knew that name. Everyone in Miami's underground knew Victor Reyes, even if they'd never seen his face. He was a kind of man who settled disputes with bullets and who had enough money to make problems disappear permanently. Your father was investigating Reyes, and Reyes had him killed. It's more complicated than that. Alex shifted on the concrete bench, favoring his injured shoulder. My father wasn't just investigating Victor. He was working with him. The words hit Elena like a slap. What are you talking about? It's Alexander Reeves, the righteous prosecutor who never lost a case. Was taking money from the biggest drug dealer in South Florida. Victor paid him to make certain cases disappear, to ensure certain witnesses never made it to trial. My father built his reputation on justice, but he was corrupt to the bone. Elena's worldview tilted. It's a prosecutor who'd destroyed her brother's life. The man she'd spent 3 years hating had been a criminal himself. Then why would Victor kill him? Because my father got greedy. He started skimming money from Victor's operations, thinking he was untouchable because of their arrangement. When Victor found out, he decided my father had become a liability. So he framed Miguel. Victor needed someone to take the fall, and your brother was perfect. Miguel had a record. He'd been seen arguing with my father at the courthouse the week before the murder. It was easy to plant evidence. Easier still to make sure the investigation didn't look too hard at other possibilities. Elena felt sick. Miguel's conviction hadn't been about justice at all. It had been about covering up one crime with the commission of another. You have proof of all this? Alex reached into his jacket pocket with his good arm and withdrew a small, digital recorder. My father kept insurance policies on everyone he worked with. Audio recordings, financial records, photographs. I found his private safe 3 months after the funeral. And you've had this evidence for over 2 years? I tried to bring it forward once. Alex's voice dropped too barely above a whisper. Victor found out. He had 2 of his men grab me outside my apartment, drove me to an empty warehouse where he explained very clearly what would happen if I ever tried to play hero. He showed me pictures of you, Elena, pictures of Miguel's daughter. He made it clear that if I exposed the truth, everyone I cared about would pay the price. The implications hit her like ice water. He's been watching me for 3 years. Every move you've made, every job you've taken, every time you've contacted Miguel in prison, Victor knows about all of it. Elena's carefully constructed sense of safety crumbled around her. She'd thought changing her name and disappearing into Miami's underground would be enough to keep her invisible. But if Victor Reyes had been watching her all this time, why now? She asked. Why are you telling me this now? Alex's green eyes met hers, and she saw something that might have been hope flickering in their depths. Because Victor is dying. Pancreatic cancer, maybe 6 months left. This organization is fracturing as different factions fight for control. For the first time since this nightmare started, he's vulnerable. And you think that makes it safe to come forward with the truth? I think it makes it possible to survive coming forward with the truth. Alex leaned forward, his intensity palpable even in the dim light. But I can't do this alone. I need someone Victor trusts, someone who can get close enough to him to gather additional evidence. Elena's blood chilled as she realized where this was heading. No, you ran cars for him, Elena, back before everything fell apart, before Miguel's arrest. Victor remembers you as one of the best drivers he ever employed. The memory hit her like a physical blow. She'd been so young then, so desperate for money to pay for Miguel's legal fees. Running drugs in souped-up cars had seemed like the only option, at least until she'd realized the cost was higher than she could afford to pay. That was a lifetime ago. Not to Victor. He's been keeping tabs on you because he knows what you're capable of. If you went back to him, offered your services again, he'd welcome you with open arms. You want me to go back to working for the man who destroyed my brother's life? I want you to help me prove your brother's innocence and put Victor Reyes where he belongs. Alex's voice carried a desperate edge, but it has to be soon. My crash tonight wasn't an accident, Elena. Victor's men have been tracking me for weeks. They caused that wreck, and when they realize I survived, they'll come looking. The abandoned station suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. Elena looked around at the shadows dancing on broken tiles, wondering if they were already being watched. How do I know you're not lying? She asked. How do I know this isn't some elaborate setup? Alex held up the digital recorder. Because I'm willing to give you this right now, with no guarantees that you'll help me. Because I know what it's like to watch someone you love suffer for something they didn't do. He pressed the device into her hands. It was warm from his body heat, solid and real, and containing the proof she'd dreamed about for 3 years. There's something else, Alex said quietly. Something I haven't told you about why I really need your help. Elena looked up from the recorder. What? Victor didn't just threaten you and Miguel's daughter if I tried to expose the truth. Alex's face was pale in the flickering light. He has my sister. She's been his prisoner for 2 years, and he's made it clear that the day I betray him is the day she dies. The confession hit Elena like a sledgehammer. Suddenly, Alex's 3 years of silence made terrible sense. He hadn't just been protecting himself or even protecting her and Miguel's family. He'd been choosing between saving one innocent person and condemning another to death. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't live with myself anymore, knowing Miguel is in prison for something he didn't do. Because my sister would rather die than let an innocent man suffer for our father's crimes. Alex's voice cracked. And because I think you might be the only person in this world capable of helping me save them both. Elena stared at him, the recorder heavy in her hands. She'd spent 3 years running from the truth, and now it was sitting right in front of her, along with a choice that could save her brother's life or get them all killed. If I do this, she said finally, if I help you, there's no going back. Victor will never stop hunting us. Then we make sure he can't hunt anyone ever again. In the distance, Elena could hear the faint echo of footsteps in the tunnel they'd come from. Real or imagined, it didn't matter. Their time in the shadows was running out. We need to move, she said, standing and shouldering her emergency kit.
I think there's another exit that leads to the port district.
We can disappear into the shipping yards until we figure out our next move. As they prepared to leave the abandoned station, Alex caught her arm with his good hand. Lena, if we do this, if we go after Victor, there's a good chance we won't survive it. She looked back at him, the stranger who'd crashed into her life carrying the key to everything she'd lost. His green eyes held pain and hope, and a desperate kind of courage that made her chest tight. Then we better make sure it counts. They disappeared into the tunnel darkness. Two damaged souls bound together by shared secrets and the terrible weight of choices that could save or damn everyone they'd ever loved. The shipping yards at dawn looked like a graveyard of steel giants. Cargo containers stacked in impossibly high towers cast long shadows across the maze of service roads where Elena had hidden her motorcycle the night before. She sat astride the bike now, watching Alex try to work feeling back into his reset shoulder while they waited for Victor Reyes to arrive. 12 hours had passed since she'd made the call that would either save her brother or destroy them all. 12 hours of planning, of listening to the recordings that proved Miguel's innocence, preparing for a meeting that might be their last. Alex's evidence was damning, but incomplete. They needed more, and there was only one way to get it. You sure about the tracker? Alex asked, testing the tiny device Elena had sewn into the lining of his jacket. GPS accurate to within 3 meters, audio pickup with a 2-mile range. She kept her voice steady, professional. Things go wrong if Victor takes you somewhere. I can't follow. I'll be able to find you. If he finds the tracker, then we'll both be dead, so it won't matter much. Alex's laugh was grim. Has anyone ever told you that your bedside manner needs work? I'm a mechanic, not a nurse. Elena adjusted the earpiece that would let her monitor his conversation with Victor. Besides, you're the one who wanted to walk into the lion's den. Truth was more complicated than that. Over the past 12 hours, as they'd planned this insane gambit, Elena had found herself drawn to Alex in ways that had nothing to do with proving Miguel's innocence. There was something magnetic about his quiet desperation, the way he carried guilt, like a physical weight. She recognized it because she carried the same burden. A black Mercedes S-Class rolled between the container stacks. Its windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. Elena's pulse quickened as she recognized the car she'd ridden in. It once, 3 years ago, when Victor had personally recruited her for the job that would change everything. That's him, she whispered into her throat mic. The Mercedes stopped 50 yards away. Victor Reyes stepped out, and Elena felt the familiar chill that came from being in the presence of someone who viewed human life as a commodity. He was smaller than his reputation suggested. Maybe 5'8" with silver hair and the kind of expensive tan that came from Caribbean vacations. But his dark eyes held a coldness that could freeze blood. 2 bodyguards flanked him as he walked toward Alex. Elena recognized the tall one as Martinez, Victor's lieutenant who'd been with him for over a decade. The other was younger, nervous, probably new to the organization. Alexander Reeves, Victor called out when he was still 20 feet away. The prodigal son returns. Alex stepped forward, his posture carefully casual, despite what Elena knew was significant pain from his injuries. Hello, Victor. You're looking well for a dead man walking. Victor's laugh was like broken glass. Cancer hasn't killed me yet, boy, though it's certainly tried. He gestured to the containers around them. Interesting choice of venue. Brings back memories. I thought it was appropriate. This is where you had my father killed, isn't it? Blood chilled. This wasn't part of the plan. Alex was supposed to play cooperative to make Victor believe he was finally ready to fall in line with the organization. Instead, he was being confrontational. Your father killed himself the day he decided to steal from me, Victor said mildly. I simply arranged for the consequences to catch up with him. While framing an innocent man for the crime, Miguel Vasquez was hardly innocent. He'd been running drugs for me for months before your father's death. If anything, I did society a favor by putting him away. Elena's hands clenched on the motorcycle's handlebars. Hearing Victor dismiss Miguel's life so casually made her want to put a bullet in his skull. But she forced herself to stay hidden, to listen. I want to make a deal, Alex said. Oh, Victor stepped closer, his bodyguards flanking him. Could you possibly offer me that I don't already have? Alex reached into his jacket pocket, and Elena held her breath as both bodyguards tensed. But he withdrew only a small USB drive, holding it up for Victor to see. My father's insurance files. Everything he had on your operations, your money laundering networks, your contacts in law enforcement, all of it. Victor's eyes sharpened with interest. Those files were destroyed in the fire at your father's office. The fire destroyed the copies. These are the originals, stored in a private safe deposit box your men never found. Alex's voice carried a convincing mix of fear and desperation. I want to trade them for my sister's life. Your sister is perfectly safe as long as you remain cooperative. Cooperative like I've been for the past 3 years, keeping my mouth shut while you used her as leverage. Alex's voice rose. I'm done playing that game, Victor. I want Rachel back, and I want out of Miami. Give me those 2 things, and you can have the files. Elena's chest tightened. This was the first time Alex had mentioned his sister's name, and she could hear the raw love in his voice when he said, "It." Whatever else was between them. His desperation to save Rachel was absolutely real. Victor studied the USB drive with calculating eyes. How do I know this contains what you claim? Because you know my father never threw anything away. Because you know he was paranoid enough to document every illegal thing he ever did. Alex held Victor's stare. And because you know I'm smart enough not to come here without leverage. Smart enough, perhaps, but not smart enough to come alone. Elena's blood turned to ice. Victor was looking directly at the container she was hidden behind, his dark eyes amused. I don't know what you mean, Alex said, but Elena could hear the fear creeping into his voice. Elena Vasquez, Victor called out. Why don't you join us? This conversation involves you, after all. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. She could run, but they'd never escape Victor's reach. She could try to fight, but she was outnumbered and outgunned. Or she could step into the open and hope the plan could still work. She chose trust over fear. Elena emerged from behind the container, her hands visible and empty. Hello, Victor? My best driver vanished without a trace 3 years ago. Victor's smile held no warmth. I've missed our working relationship. I found a different line of work, so I heard. Midnight Motors has quite a reputation in certain circles. Victor gestured between her and Alex. I have to admit, I didn't see this partnership coming. The prosecutor's son and the convict's sister. It's almost poetic. We want the same thing, Elena said. Justice for the people we love. Justice. Victor tasted the word like fine wine. Such a subjective concept. Your brother got justice. He was a criminal who got caught. He was a scapegoat who got framed. Details. Victor waved dismissively. But I'm intrigued by this sudden cooperation between you two. Tell me, Elena, what exactly has young Alexander promised you? Elena felt the weight of Alex's eyes on her, the trust he'd placed in her judgment. Everything depended on selling this performance. Proof that Miguel didn't kill his father, and a chance to make the real killer pay. In an exchange, I help you eliminate a problem that's been troubling you for 3 years. Victor's eyebrows rose. Oh. Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Alex has been building a case against you. Federal prosecutors, FBI contacts, a whole network of law enforcement officials who want to bring down Victor Reyes. But if he were to disappear, if he were to have an unfortunate accident, all of that investigation dies with him. Alex's shock was palpable even through the earpiece. This wasn't part of their plan. Elena was improvising now, walking a tightrope over an abyss. Interesting, Victor mused. We're offering to betray your new partner? I'm offering to choose the winning side. Said it yourself. You've been watching me for 3 years. You know what I'm capable of? You know what I'm willing to do for family? Elena's voice hardened. Miguel is serving a life sentence for a crime he didn't commit. If giving you Alex's head on a platter gets my brother out of prison, then that's the trade I'm willing to make. The shipping yard fell silent, except for the distant sound of waves against the harbor seawall. Lena could feel Alex's eyes boring into her, could imagine the betrayal he must be feeling. But this was the only way. Victor would never believe they were working together, But he might believe that Elena would sacrifice anyone to save Miguel. Fascinating, Victor said finally. And what makes you think I'd honor such an arrangement? Because I have something. You want more than Alex's death. Elena pulled a second USB drive from her pocket. The real insurance files. The ones Alex has been hiding for 3 years. Alex made a strangled sound of protest, but Elena didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Victor, watching the greed bloom in his dark gaze. You see, Victor, Alex made a mistake when he trusted me with his secrets. He told me about the safe deposit box, gave me access to everything his father had hidden away. Financial records, audio recordings, photographs. Enough evidence to bring down your entire organization. Elena, what are you doing? Alex's voice was raw with betrayal. What I have to do, she replied without turning around. I'm sorry, Alex, but family comes first. Victor stepped closer, his hand extended toward the USB drive. You understand that if you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate double-cross, both of you will die very slowly. I understand. Elena placed the drive in his palm, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. I want in return is Miguel's freedom and safe passage out of Florida. Victor pocketed the drive, then gestured to Martinez. Kill him. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd gambled that Victor would want to verify the contents of the drive before taking action, that he'd be cautious enough to keep them alive until he was certain he had what he wanted. She'd been wrong. Martinez drew his weapon, a compact pistol, that looked like a toy in his massive hand. Alex stood frozen, his face pale with shock and betrayal. In seconds, he would be dead. And Elena's desperate gambit would end with the death of the only person who could prove Miguel's innocence. She called out. Victor raised a hand, and Martinez paused with his finger on the trigger. There's one more thing you should know, Elena said, her voice steady, despite her racing pulse. Alex didn't just copy his father's files. He added to them. 3 years' worth of surveillance on your operations, recordings of phone calls, documentation, of money transfers. Everything he needed to build a federal case against you. Victor's eyes sharpened. Where are these additional files? Somewhere safe. Somewhere only Alex can access them. Elena finally turned to look at Alex, and the betrayal in his green eyes nearly broke her heart. If you kill him now, you'll never find them. But if you keep him alive, give me time to persuade him to cooperate. I can get you everything. And why would he cooperate with the woman who just betrayed him? Elena smiled, and it was the saddest expression Alex had ever seen, because deep down, he knows I'm right. Family is all that matters in the end, and his sister is still your prisoner. Victor considered this, his calculating mind weighing options and consequences. Finally, he nodded to Martinez, who reluctantly lowered his weapon. You have 24 hours, Victor told Elena. Convince him to give me the location of those files. Or you can watch him die knowing that your brother will rot in prison forever. And if I succeed, then Miguel Vasquez gets a new trial, complete with evidence that will exonerate him. You get your safe passage out of Florida. And Alexander gets to live long enough to say goodbye to his sister before I put a bullet in his brain. The deal was poison wrapped in false hope, but it bought them time. Time to figure out how to turn the tables on Victor Reyes once and for all. Deal, Elena said. Victor's smile was the coldest thing she'd ever seen. Take him to the warehouse on Pier 47. You know the one? Sure, he understands that his sister's life depends on his cooperation. As Victor and his men prepared to leave, Elena caught Alex's arm. He tried to pull away, but she held on. Trust me, she whispered, low enough that only he could hear. Trust you? His voice was bitter. You just sold me out to save your brother. I bought us time. The drive I gave Victor is encrypted, and he'll need ours to break it. When he does, he'll find financial records that implicate half the corrupt cops in Miami, but nothing about his drug operations. It's bait, Alex. Enough truth to keep him interested, but not enough to satisfy him. Alex stared at her, his green eyes searching her face for signs of deception, and the real files. Safe. Hidden where Victor will never find them. Elena's voice dropped too barely audible. But we need to get to your sister before he realizes. What I've done, once he breaks that encryption and discovers I've given him useless information, He'll kill us all. Understanding dawned in Alex's eyes, followed by something that might have been admiration. You're insane, probably. But I'm also our best chance of getting out of this alive. Elena glanced toward the Mercedes, where Victor was speaking quietly with Martinez. Can you get us into that warehouse? It's not just a warehouse. It's Victor's primary distribution center. Armed guards, security cameras, the works. Alex flexed his injured shoulder. And somewhere inside, my sister is waiting for a rescue that might never come. And we better make sure it does. Victor's Mercedes disappeared between the container. Stacks, Elena helped Alex toward her motorcycle. It had maybe 6 hours before Victor's tech people cracked the encryption on the USB drive she'd given him. 6 hours to infiltrate the most heavily guarded facility in Victor's criminal empire. Rescue Alex's sister. And escape with enough evidence to bring down the most dangerous man in Miami. The engine roared to life beneath them as Elena kicked the bike into gear. Alex's arms wrapped around her waist, and she could feel the tremor in his hands that had nothing to do with his injuries. Elena, he said, as they raced through the maze of shipping containers toward an uncertain fate. If this goes wrong, if we don't make it out, we'll make it out. But even as she said the words, Elena wasn't sure she believed them. They were about to walk into the heart of Victor's empire with nothing but desperate courage and a plan that relied on perfect timing and impossible luck. Behind them, the dawn sun painted the shipping yards gold and crimson, like a promise of the bloodshed to come. Asterisk, the warehouse on Pier 47 crouched against the Miami skyline like a concrete cancer. Windows painted black and razor wire crowning its flat roof. Elena cut the motorcycle's engine 2 blocks away, coasting to a stop in the shadow of an abandoned fish processing plant. The salt air carried the stench of low tide and something else, something that made her stomach clench with dread. 3 guards on the perimeter, Alex whispered, studying the building through a pair of compact binoculars. 2 more at the main entrance. Standard patrol pattern every 15 minutes, and inside, at least a dozen men, maybe more. Victor's not taking any chances. Alex lowered the binoculars, his face grim. Rachel could be anywhere in that building. It's 4 stories, basement to roof access. Elena studied the warehouse's exterior, her mechanic's mind automatically cataloging structural weaknesses and access points. The loading dock on the east side looked promising, and she could see ventilation. Shafts that might be large enough to crawl through. But getting inside was only the first problem. Tell me about your sister, she said, pulling on the black tactical gear they'd purchased from one of her underground contacts. What's she like? Alex's expression softened, and for a moment the hard edges of the past few days fell away from his face. Smart. Too smart for her own good sometimes. She's a computer programmer, works for a cybersecurity firm in Atlanta. Or worked before Victor took her. How did he get to her? She came to Miami for my father's funeral. I told her to stay away, that it wasn't safe, but Rachel never listened to anyone. Alex's voice cracked slightly. Victor's men grabbed her. From the hotel parking lot. I found a note in my apartment the next day. Insurance policy, it said. As long as you stay quiet, she stays alive. Elena felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest. Victor Reyes had destroyed so many lives, torn apart so many families. Miguel rotting in prison, Alex's sister held captive for 2 years, her own. Life reduced to running and hiding. Had to end tonight. There, Alex said, pointing to a service entrance on the building's north side. Fire door, probably alarmed but not heavily monitored. If we can get inside without triggering the main security system, we improvise from there, Lena checked. Her weapon, a compact Glock she'd taken from her emergency stash. You sure you're up for this? That shoulder's going to slow you down? I've been thinking about this moment for 2 years. I'm not stopping now. They moved across the open ground between buildings like shadows, staying low and using the scattered shipping containers for cover. The warehouse loomed larger as they approached, its black windows reflecting the neon glow of Miami's distant skyline. Elena's pulse hammered in her throat as they reached the service entrance. Alex produced a small electronic device from his jacket pocket, running it along the doorframe until it beeped softly. Magnetic alarm, he whispered. I can bypass it. But we'll have maybe 30 seconds before the system registers the disruption. Do it. The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the night air. Elena slipped inside first, her weapon drawn, scanning the narrow corridor that stretched into darkness. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on concrete, walls, and the air smelled of machine oil and fear. This way, Alex breathed, leading her deeper into the building. They moved through a maze of storage rooms and maintenance corridors, avoiding the main areas where Victor's men would be stationed. Elena's training from her military days came flooding back, a muscle memory guiding her through the darkness. They reached a stairwell that climbed toward the building's upper floors. Alex paused, listening to the sounds filtering down from above. Male voices, the clink of weapons, the electronic hum of surveillance equipment. "She's on the 3rd floor," he whispered. Victor likes to keep his prisoners where he can watch them personally. They climbed in silence, each step taking them deeper into enemy territory. At the 3rd floor landing, Alex held up a hand for Elena to stop. Through the door's small window, she could see a long corridor lined with offices and storage rooms. 2 guards sat at a table halfway down the hall, playing cards and drinking coffee. "There," Alex pointed to a door at the far end of the corridor. "That's where he's keeping her." Elena studied the layout, calculating distances and timing. "Take the guards. You get to Rachel. We have maybe 5 minutes before someone realizes we're here." "Elena, wait." Alex caught her arm as she reached for the door handle. "There's something I haven't told you about Rachel." Ice formed in Elena's stomach. "What? She's not just a programmer. She's the one who's been helping me gather evidence against Victor for the past year. Phone records, financial transactions, digital surveillance. She's been feeding me information through encrypted channels, even from inside his prison." The implication hit Elena like a sledgehammer. She's been working as a double agent. And if Victor finds out, if he realizes she's been spying on him, ... Alex's voice trailed off, but Elena understood. Victor would do more than kill Rachel. He would make her death as painful and prolonged as possible. All the more reason to get her out of here now. Elena opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The guards looked up from their card game, surprise flickering across their faces. In the instant before Elena's training took over, the first man went down hard, her pistol, but connecting with his temple in a precise strike that dropped him unconscious. The second guard fumbled for his weapon, but Elena was already moving, her knee driving into his solar plexus with enough force to double him over. "Keys," she hissed, searching the unconscious men's pockets. She found a ring of electronic key cards and tossed them to Alex. The door at the end of the corridor opened with a soft electronic beep. Elena followed Alex into what had once been an executive office, but now served as an improvised prison cell. A young woman sat on a narrow cot in the far corner. Her dark hair matted, and her clothes rumpled from days of captivity. But when she looked up, Elena's blood turned to ice. Rachel Reeves had Victor's dark eyes, the same calculating coldness, the same predatory intelligence. And when she smiled at Alex, Elena saw something that made her stomach clench with dread. "Hello, brother," Rachel said, her voice carrying a warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Right on time, Rachel, thank God." Alex rushed to her side, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm fine." Rachel's gaze met Elena's over Alex's shoulder, and Elena saw the truth in those dark eyes. "Though I have to say, I'm impressed. I didn't think you'd actually bring her here." Alex pulled back, confusion flickering across his face. "Bring who? Elena Vasquez, of course?" Rachel stood, smoothing down her rumpled clothes with casual precision. "The woman who's been helping you build a case against poor Victor?" Elena's weapon was in her hand before she consciously decided to draw it. "Alex, get away from her." "What?" Alex looked between them, still not understanding. "Elena, what's wrong?" "Your sister isn't Victor's prisoner," Elena said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "She's his partner." Rachel's laugh was like broken crystal. "Very good. Though it took you longer to figure it out than I expected. Rachel, what is she talking about?" Alex stepped backward, his face pale with dawning horror. "Oh, Alex." Rachel's voice held genuine affection, mixed with pity. "My sweet, naive brother. Did you really think Victor Reyes got to be the most powerful drug dealer in South Florida by being careless? Did you think he'd really keep a prisoner in his primary distribution center, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of product? You've been working with him, Alex whispered. This whole time you've been... I've been running his digital operations for 3 years. Money laundering, encrypted communications, cybersecurity. Victor may be old school, but he's smart enough to know that modern crime requires modern solutions. Rachel moved closer to Alex, her expression almost tender. And when dear old dad started skimming money, started thinking he could outsmart Victor Reyes, well, someone had to clean up the mess. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place, forming a picture that made her physically ill. You planned your father's murder. I executed it, Rachel corrected. Victor wanted to handle it himself, but I convinced him that a family tragedy would be more believable. Poor prosecutor, killed by a convicted felon with a grudge, so much cleaner than a gang-style execution. Alex staggered backward, his face gray with shock. You killed our father. I killed a corrupt prosecutor who was stealing from my employer and threatening to bring down an organization I'd spent years helping to build. Rachel's voice hardened. Alexander Reeves was a liability, Alex. He had to be eliminated. And Miguel? A convenient scapegoat? Victor needed someone to take the fall, and Miguel Vasquez fit the profile perfectly. Rachel shrugged. It's nothing personal, just business. Elena's finger tightened on her weapon's trigger. This woman had destroyed Miguel's life as casually as swatting a fly. Had let her brother suffer for 2 years, believing she was a victim, instead of the architect of their family's destruction. But now we have a problem, Rachel continued, moving to stand behind Alex. Because you've both learned too much. You've seen too much. And Victor doesn't like loose ends. The whole thing was a setup, Elena realized. The crash, the meeting at the shipping yards, even my betrayal. You orchestrated all of it.
Very
good, though I have to admit, your performance this morning was quite convincing. For a moment, I almost believed you'd really betrayed poor Alex here. Rachel pulled a small pistol from beneath her jacket, pressing it against the base of Alex's skull. But Victor and I both knew you'd never abandon your brother's only hope of freedom. Alex's eyes met Elena's, and she saw the devastating realization there. Everything they'd fought for, every risk they'd taken had been leading to this moment. They'd walked into a trap so perfectly constructed that even their escape from it had been planned in advance. What do you want? Elena asked, her weapon still trained on Rachel despite the impossibility of taking a clean shot with Alex in the way. Victor wants his files back, the real ones, not the decoy you gave him this morning. He also wants you both to disappear permanently. Along with any inconvenient evidence you might have gathered. Rachel's voice was conversational, as if discussing the weather. I'm here to make sure that happens, and if I refuse, then Alex dies right now. Miguel rots in prison forever, and you spend whatever time you have left running from Victor's hunters. Rachel's grip tightened on her weapon. But if you cooperate, give us the location of the real files. I promise you'll both die quickly, cleanly, no unnecessary suffering. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, searching for any angle that might save them both. But Rachel held all the cards. She had Alex as a human shield. She had Victor's entire organization backing her up, and she had the cold intelligence to anticipate Elena's every move. There's one thing you didn't plan for, Elena said finally. Oh, and what's that? Miguel isn't the only one who knows the truth about your father's murder. Rachel's eyes sharpened. What are you talking about, Carlos Rivera? My business partner at Midnight Motors. Sent him copies of everything, Alex. Gave me along with instructions to deliver them to the FBI if anything happened to us. Elena's voice carried a confidence she didn't feel. Kill us, and you'll have federal agents crawling all over Victor's operation within hours. You're bluffing. Am I? You've been monitoring my communications for months. I called Carlos at 6 this morning, right before we came here. I had time to send him everything. Elena could see doubt flickering in Rachel's dark eyes. The woman was brilliant. But her brilliance had led her to construct a plan so complex that she couldn't account for every variable. And sometimes the simplest variable was the most dangerous. It doesn't matter, Rachel said finally. Carlos Rivera won't live long enough to deliver anything to anyone. Victor has men watching your garage right now. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Carlos was more than just her business partner. He was the closest thing to family she had outside of Miguel. Victor's men killed him because of her choices. Don't, she whispered. Then give me what I want, the real files. Now, Elena's weapon trembled in her hands. She was trapped between impossible choices, each one leading to death and destruction for someone she cared about. But as she looked into Alex's green eyes, saw the desperate love and terrible guilt there, she realized that some choices weren't really choices at all. The files are in my head, she said quietly. What? I memorized them. Every financial record, every audio transcript, every piece of evidence Alex's father collected. I have a photographic memory for technical specifications, and I applied the same skill to legal documents. Elena's voice grew stronger. If you want the information, you need me alive and cooperative. Kill me, and it dies with me. Rachel's laugh was sharp with frustration. You're lying. Test me. Pick any transaction from any month in the past 5 years. I can recite the amounts, the account numbers, the dates, everything. Elena met Rachel's. Stare without flinching. But I'll only do it once Miguel is free and Alex is safe. That's not how this works. Then I guess we're at an impasse. The warehouse office fell silent, except for the distant hum of machinery and the sound of 3 people breathing. Elena could see the calculation in Rachel's eyes, the weighing of risks and benefits that made her such a valuable asset to Victor's organization. But she could also see something else. Desperation. There's another option, Alex said quietly. Both women looked at him, surprise flickering across their faces. I'll trade places with Carlos, he continued, his voice steady despite. The gun pressed against his skull. Let Elena go back to her partner. Make sure he's safe. I'll stay here. Give you everything you want to know about the federal investigation I've been building. Alex, no. Elena breathed. It's the only way, he said, his green eyes holding hers. You were right about family being everything. Rachel is still my sister, even after everything she's done. And maybe, somewhere inside her, there's still enough humanity left to honor a deal. Rachel's face tightened. Don't try to manipulate me with sentimentality, Alex. It won't work. I'm not manipulating anything. I'm offering you a trade that benefits everyone. Elena goes free, Carlos stays safe, Miguel gets the evidence he needs. For a new trial, and you get what Victor wants most. Alex's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. My silence. Forever. Elena realized what Alex was really offering. Not just his cooperation, but his life. He would give Rachel the information she needed, and then he would disappear. No federal investigation, no threat to Victor's empire, no more complications from the prosecutor's son who'd been carrying guilt for 3 years. It was the sacrifice play. The move that saved everyone else at the cost of the person making it. Elena. Alex said, his eyes never leaving hers.
Ow.
Tell Miguel I'm sorry. Tell him that some people do get the justice they deserve, even if it takes longer than it should. Alex, go. Now, before I change my mind and decide to fight my way out of this like an idiot. Elena looked at him, this man who'd crashed into her life less than 24 hours ago and changed everything. She wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, wanted to save them both, but she could see the truth in his green eyes. This was the only play that had a chance of working. I'll find another way, she whispered. Alex's smile was sad and beautiful and absolutely final. No, you won't, and that's okay. Some debts can only be paid in full. Elena backed toward the door, her weapon still trained on Rachel despite the futility of the gesture. At the threshold, she paused for one last look at Alex Reeves, the man who'd given her back her brother's future at the cost of his own. Thank you, she said. Then she turned and ran, leaving behind the sound of Rachel's voice as she began to interrogate her brother about federal investigations and hidden evidence, and all the ways their father's sins had finally come home to roost. Elena's hands shook as she dialed Carlos's number from the payphone. Outside a 24-hour diner 6 miles from the warehouse. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, before his familiar voice answered. Midnight Motors, Carlos speaking. God. Elena closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Carlos, listen to me very carefully. You need to get out of the shop right now. Pack everything important and disappear for at least 48 hours. Elena, where the hell are you? It's 3 in the morning and there are some very unfriendly looking men sitting in a car across the street from the garage. I know, that's why you need to leave. Now, what kind of trouble are you in? Elena's throat tightened. Carlos had been asking that question for 3 years, ever since she'd shown up at his garage with a fake name and cash for a partnership. He'd never pushed for answers. Never demanded explanations for the nightmares that sometimes woke her screaming or the way she flinched at unexpected sounds. He'd simply given her a place to belong. The kind that gets good people killed, she said. Carlos, in my desk drawer, there's a manila envelope sealed with red wax. Take it to FBI agent Sarah Martinez at the Miami field office. Tell her it contains evidence in the Alexander Reeves murder case. Elena, what are you talking about? Come back to the shop and we'll figure this out together. I can't. There are things I have to do first. Elena's voice cracked. Carlos, you've been the best friend I could have asked for. Take care of yourself, okay, Elena? Wait. She hung up before he could say anything else, before her resolve could weaken. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Elena slumped against the phone booth, exhaustion and grief hitting her like a physical weight. Alex was probably dead by now. Rachel would have gotten whatever information she needed, and then she would have eliminated the last witness to her father's murder. Another innocent life destroyed by the Reeves family's twisted legacy, but Miguel would go free. The evidence Elena had given Carlos would be enough to overturn his conviction. It's enough to prove that he'd been framed for a crime committed by the prosecutor's own daughter. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. The sound of tires on wet asphalt made Elena look up from her grief. A black sedan was pulling into the diner's parking lot, moving too slowly and too deliberately to be anything innocent. Through the tinted windshield, she could see the outline of 2 figures. Victor's men had found her. Elena ran. She sprinted through the diner's rear exit into an alley that reeked of garbage and broken dreams. Behind her, she could hear car doors slamming, footsteps echoing off brick walls. She had maybe 30 seconds before they cornered her. The alley opened onto a residential street, lined with small houses and overgrown yards. Elena vaulted a chain-link fence, landing hard in someone's backyard. A dog began barking somewhere nearby, and lights flickered on in bedroom windows. She kept running, 3 blocks, 5. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, but she didn't slow. Down. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but never disappeared entirely. Victor's men were professionals. They would find her eventually. Elena's motorcycle was hidden in a parking garage 2 miles away. If she could reach it, she might have a chance of escaping Miami entirely. There were contacts in other cities, people who could provide new identities, and safe passage to places Victor's influence couldn't reach. She could disappear again, start over somewhere else. But first, she had to know if Alex was still alive. The warehouse district was quieter now. The loading docks empty and the container yards dark. Elena approached Pier 47 from the waterside. Using the shadows of derelict boats and abandoned piers for cover, the warehouse looked exactly the same as it had hours earlier, but something felt different. Wrong. Too quiet. Too still, Elena found a fire escape on an adjacent building and climbed to a vantage point that gave her a view of the warehouse's upper floors. The windows that had been dark before now glowed with harsh fluorescent light. She could see figures moving inside, more people than there should be if this was just Victor cleaning up loose ends. Something had gone wrong with Rachel's plan. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her check the message. Pier 52. Come alone. You have 10 minutes. Alex was alive. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she made her way through the maze of shipping containers toward Pier 52. It could be a trap. Probably was a trap. But the alternative was leaving Alex to die alone while she ran away to safety. She'd done enough running. Pier 52 was smaller than the others. It's designed for fishing boats rather than cargo ships. A single figure stood at the end of the dock, silhouetted against the distant lights of Miami Beach. Even in the darkness, Elena recognized Alex's stance, the way he favored his injured shoulder. "You came," he said as she approached. "You're supposed to be dead." Alex's laugh was hollow. "According to Rachel, I am. Officially, Alex Reeves died in that warehouse an hour ago. Killed while trying to escape from Victor's men. But you're here, Rachel. Let me go." Alex turned to face her, and Elena could see the devastation in his green eyes. "Did you know what the worst part is? She did it because she loves me." Somewhere underneath all that cold calculation, she's still the little sister who used to make me birthday cards and cry when I got hurt. Elena stepped closer, trying to read his expression in the dim light. "What happened in there?" "I gave her what she wanted. The location of the real evidence files, the names of my federal contacts, everything." Alex's voice was barely above a whisper, and in exchange, she gave me a choice. Die with honor as a hero trying to save his sister, or live with the knowledge of what she really is. She'll let you walk away? She gave me a 10-minute head start before she calls Victor and tells him I'm still alive. Long enough to say goodbye, not long enough to matter. Alex met Elena's eyes. She also told me that Carlos Rivera is safe. Victor's men were called off an hour ago. Relief flooded through Elena, so intense it made her dizzy. Thank God. The evidence you gave him will be enough to free Miguel. Rachel confirmed it. She's going to let that slide as her final gift to me. Elena studied Alex's face, looking for signs of hope or determination. Instead, she saw only exhaustion and a terrible kind of peace. "We can still run," she said. "Both of us. Together. I have contacts, safe houses, ways to disappear that even Victor can't follow. For how long? A year? 5 years? 10? Alex shook his head. "And I'm tired of running. I'm tired of living with what I know. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching innocent people suffer for my family's crimes." "So what are you going to do?" Alex pulled a small device from his jacket pocket. It looked like a smartphone, but Elena could see the modifications that marked it as something more sophisticated. "Dead man's switch," he explained. "If I don't enter a code every 12 hours, it automatically uploads everything I know about Victor's organization to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country, financial records, shipping manifests, personnel files, everything. Alex, I'm done being a victim, Elena. I'm done letting Victor Reyes control my life through fear." Alex's voice grew stronger. "If I'm going to die, it's going to mean something." Elena realized what he was planning, and ice formed in her chest. "You're going to make yourself bait? I'm going to end this. It's tonight. Forever." Alex stepped closer to her. "But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "When it's over, when Victor is dead or in prison, I need you to visit Miguel. Tell him that some debts take a long time to pay, but they always come due in the end." Elena's vision blurred with tears. She didn't realize she was crying. There has to be another way. There isn't. We both know it. Alex reached out and touched her face, his fingers gentle against her cheek. "But you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "The chance to die as the person I should have been all along." In the distance, Elena could hear the sound of engines, multiple vehicles converging on the Pier District, Victor's men responding to Rachel's call. They had maybe 2 minutes before this place became a war zone. "Elena, you need to go. Now." She should have run. Should have taken Alex's advice and disappeared into the night, grateful that Miguel would be freed and that her own life had been spared. Instead, she found herself reaching into her jacket and pulling out her weapon. "What are you doing?" Alex asked, making a choice. Elena checked the magazine, chambered around. "You're not facing this alone, Elena. No, this isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment Rachel murdered your father and framed my brother. It became my fight when Victor Reyes decided he could destroy families and treat human lives like commodities." Elena's voice hardened with resolve. "And it became my fight when I realized that some things are worth dying for." Alex stared at her, and she saw the exact moment when his desperation transformed into something else, something that looked almost like love. "You know, we probably won't survive this." "I know, and you're staying anyway." "I'm staying anyway." Sound of engines grew louder. Headlights swept across the water as Victor's convoy approached the pier. Elena could count at least 6 vehicles, probably 30 men armed with military-grade weapons. She and Alex had 2 pistols and whatever ammunition they were carrying. It should have been hopeless. Instead, Elena felt a strange kind of peace settling over her. For 3 years, she'd been running from the consequences of other people's choices. Tonight, finally, she was making a choice of her own. "There's a speedboat tied up at the next pier," Alex said, scanning the approaching lights. "If we can get to it, we're not running." Elena took position behind a concrete barrier, her weapon. Trained on the approaching convoy, dead man's switch. Remember? As long as you're alive to enter that code, Victor's entire empire is at risk. I'll have to come for you personally, and when he does, we end this. All of it. The first vehicle rounded the corner. Onto the pier, its headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Elena could see armed figures moving inside, preparing for what they probably thought would be a simple execution. "They were wrong, Elena," Alex said quietly. "Yeah. What it's worth, I'm glad we found each other. Even if it's only for tonight. Especially because it's only for tonight." The convoy stopped 50 yards away, and doors began opening. Victor's men deployed with military precision, taking positions behind vehicles and shipping containers. In the center of it all, Elena could see Victor himself, flanked by Martinez and Rachel. A megaphone crackled to life. "Alex Reeves," Victor's voice echoed across the water. "You have something that belongs to me. Return it, and your death will be quick." Alex stood up from behind the barrier, making himself visible in the harsh glare of the headlights. "I have something that belongs to the world," he called back. "And in about 11 hours, they're going to get it whether I'm alive or not." Elena saw Victor gesture to his men, saw weapons being raised and aimed. This was it, the moment when everything they'd fought for would either succeed or fail spectacularly. "Victor!" Alex shouted. "Before your men turn us into Swiss cheese, there's something you should know about your precious partner." "Alex, don't," Elena whispered. But he was already committed. "Rachel Reeves has been feeding information to the FBI for 6 months. She's the reason 3 of your safe houses got raided last week. She's the reason your Bahamian accounts were frozen yesterday." Elena saw Rachel's face go pale in the headlight glare, saw the exact moment when Victor's attention shifted from Alex to his sister. It was a masterful lie. It's perfectly calculated to create chaos in the enemy's ranks. But it was also a death sentence for Rachel. "You're lying," Victor called out. But Elena could hear the doubt in his voice. "Check her phone records. Check her computer. Check the encrypted communications she's been sending to Agent Sarah Martinez at the FBI field office." Alex's voice carried across the water with perfect conviction. "Rachel Reeves is a federal informant, Victor. She's been playing you from the beginning." Elena watched Rachel take a step backward, her face a mask of terror. Whatever loyalty Victor might have felt toward his computer expert was evaporating in real time, replaced by the paranoid suspicion that had kept him alive in a dangerous business for decades. "Martinez, secure her," Victor ordered. "Boss? I don't think." "Secure her now?" As Martinez moved toward Rachel, confusion rippled through the assembled men. Some kept their weapons trained on Alex and Elena. Others turned to watch the drama unfolding. Behind them, it was exactly the opening Alex had been hoping for. "Now," he whispered, Elena opened fire. Her first shot took out the spotlight on the lead vehicle, plunging half the pier into darkness. Her second shot shattered the megaphone in Victor's hand, sending him diving for cover behind a concrete piling. Alex was moving too, his weapon barking as he targeted the men on the left flank. For 30 seconds, the pier erupted in chaos. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like deadly fireworks, and the sound of gunfire echoed off the water. Elena rolled behind a new position, trying to stay mobile as bullets chewed up the concrete around her. She saw Martinez go down, clutching his shoulder. Saw 2 of Victor's men fall to Alex's precise shooting. But there were too many of them, and eventually numbers would tell, Elena. Alex's voice cut through the gunfire. The boat. She looked toward the next pier and saw what he meant. A coast guard patrol boat was racing toward them across the dark water, its blue lights flashing and its searchlight sweeping the shoreline. Someone had called in the cavalry. Carlos Elena breathed, realizing what her partner had done. He hadn't just delivered the evidence to the FBI. He'd told them where to find her. The arrival of law enforcement changed everything. Victor's men were criminals, but they weren't stupid. A firefight with local drug dealers was one thing, but engaging federal agents was a death sentence for everyone involved. "Fall back," Victor shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos as more patrol boats appeared on the horizon. The FBI had come in force, turning the isolated pier into a kill zone for anyone stupid enough to stay and fight. Elena saw her chance. While Victor's men were distracted by the approaching boats, she sprinted toward Alex's position. He was pinned down behind a shipping container, blood seeping through his shirt from at least 2 wounds. "How bad?" she asked, sliding into cover. Beside him, "I'll live long enough." Alex's face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "Elena, listen to me. When the FBI gets here, you need to tell them everything. About Rachel, about Victor, about the evidence. Make sure they understand what really happened to my father. You can tell them yourself." Alex's smile was sad and knowing. "No, I can't. Look." Elena followed his gaze and felt her heart stop. Victor was moving toward them through the chaos, using the confusion as cover. He'd abandoned his men, abandoned his organization, abandoned everything except the need to silence the one person who could destroy him. "He's not going to let the FBI take me alive," Alex said quietly. "Not when I know where all the bodies are buried." "Then we stop him here. Lena, you need to understand something. The dead man's switch, it's not real. I made it up to buy us time." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What? There's no automatic upload, no insurance policy. If I die, the evidence dies with me. Unless..." Alex pressed a small USB drive into her hands, his fingers closing around hers with desperate intensity. "Everything is on there. Financial records, audio files, enough evidence to bring down Victor's entire organization and prove Miguel's innocence." His green eyes bored into hers. "But only if you survive to deliver it." Elena stared at the drive, understanding finally. Dawning, Alex had never planned to survive this night. He'd planned to be a distraction, a target so compelling that Elena could escape in the chaos with the evidence that would save her brother. "I'm not leaving you. You have to. Miguel needs that evidence, and Carlos needs you to come home safe." Alex struggled to his feet, checking his weapons magazine. Besides, someone has to make sure Rachel faces justice for what she's done. Through the gunfire and shouting, Elena could see Victor getting closer. 20 yards. 15. In seconds, he would have a clear shot at both of them. "Alex, tell Miguel that his sister loved him enough to fight for the truth. Tell Carlos that his faith in you wasn't misplaced." Alexa's voice was steady, despite the pain she could see in his face. "And Elena? Tell yourself that some stories have heroes, even if they don't always get to see the ending." Before Elena could stop him, Alex was moving. He broke cover and sprinted toward Victor, drawing the drug lord's attention and his weapon. Elena heard. The crack of gunfire saw Alex stumble but keep running. The 2 men collided near the edge of the pier, grappling for control of Victor's weapon. Elena raised her own gun, but couldn't get a clear shot with them so close together. She could only watch as they fought with the desperate fury of men who knew only one of them would walk away. The struggle ended with a single gunshot that echoed across the water like thunder. Victor, Reyes, toppled backward into the harbor, with a splash that seemed impossibly small for such a momentous event. Alex stood at the pier's edge for a moment, swaying on his feet. Before his legs gave out and he collapsed to his knees, Elena reached him just as the FBI boats pulled up to the dock. Agent Sarah Martinez was the first one ashore, her weapon drawn and her team spreading out to secure the scene. "Alex Reeves," Martinez called out. "Here," Elena answered, cradling Alex's head in her lap. Blood soaked through his shirt from multiple wounds, and his breathing was shallow and rapid. Paramedics are en route, Martinez said, kneeling beside them. Mr. Reeves, we need to know about the evidence you mentioned. Agent Rivera said you had information about the Alexander Reeves murder case. Alex's eyes found Elena's face, and she saw him trying to speak. She leaned closer, catching his whispered words. Tell them Rachel is the key to everything. Save your strength, Elena said, but they both knew it was too late. Too much blood, too many wounds, too little time. The drive, Alex breathed. Make sure, Miguel. I will. I promise. Alex's hand found hers, his grip surprisingly strong for someone who was dying. Thank you for giving me the chance to be better than I was. His eyes closed, and Elena felt the last of his strength ebb away like a tide returning to the sea. Agent Martinez was saying something about evidence and investigations. But Elena couldn't hear her over the roaring in her ears. She sat on that blood-stained pier, holding the body of a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. A man who'd given everything to right a wrong that wasn't entirely his to fix. In her pocket, the USB drive felt heavier than it should have weighted with the promise of Miguel's freedom and the cost of Alex's sacrifice. 3 months later, Elena stood outside Rayford's correctional institution, watching her brother walk through the gates as a free man. The evidence on Alex's drive had been even more comprehensive than he'd promised. Financial records that traced Victor's money laundering operation back 5 years, audio recordings that captured Rachel planning their father's murder, digital communications that proved Miguel had been framed. Rachel Reeves was serving life without parole. Victor's organization had collapsed without its leader, scattered to the winds by federal prosecutions and internal power struggles. And Miguel Vasquez was free to see his daughter grow up, free to rebuild the life that had been stolen from him. You look good, Miguel said as they walked toward Elena's truck. He was thinner than she remembered, grayer, but his eyes held a light that had been missing for 3 years. You too, Carlos told me what happened, about the man who died to prove my innocence. Miguel stopped walking, turning to face his sister. I wish I could have thanked him. Elena thought about Alex's green eyes, about his quiet courage and his terrible guilt, about the way he'd smiled when he realized she was staying to fight beside him, about the last words he'd whispered as he died in her arms. He knew, she said finally. Somehow I think he knew. They drove back to Miami in comfortable silence. Past the shipping yards where it had all started, past the warehouse where Alex had made his final choice. Lena had left flowers there the week before. White roses that would probably be blown away by the next storm but felt important anyway. Carlos was waiting at Midnight Motors with a bottle of champagne and tears in his eyes. He'd kept the garage running while Elena dealt with FBI debriefs and court testimony, never asking for explanations she couldn't give. Some friendships were strong enough to survive any storm, so what now? Miguel asked, as they sat in the garage's small office, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and possibility. Now we rebuild, Elena said. All of us. And the nightmares. Elena smiled, the first genuinely happy expression she'd worn in months. I think they might finally be starting to fade. Outside, Miami hummed with its usual chaos of life and dreams. And second chances? Elena had learned that some debts could only be paid with blood, that some choices carried consequences that lasted forever. But she'd also learned that love could survive anything, that family was worth fighting for, that sometimes the most broken people were capable of the greatest acts of courage. In her desk drawer, she kept a small photo that Agent Martinez had given her. Alex Reeves at his sister's college graduation before everything went wrong. He was smiling in the picture, young and hopeful and unaware of the darkness that would soon consume his family. Elena liked to think that somewhere after Alex had found that smile again, the end asterisk like this video, if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.